Warning: the following podcast contains graphic content that may be disturbing or triggering to some listeners. Discretion is advised. The Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast is available free of charge thanks to the support of Cracked Armor.
Their mission is to raise awareness for PTSD, TBI, and mental health to support those who struggle. By creating an army of warriors who represent the gear, their hope is that it will send a message to others that they are not alone.
Go to crackedarmor.com. Say hi to Mark Long, read about the story, and find some research information about PTSD. And if you can, look good while supporting Cracked Armor by buying some gear.
(10-9), did you say Papa Tango Sierra Delta? 10-4.
There's so much left to do, so many things I wanna say, and I say, don't make the change. If it rains every single day, I'll fight to blow it all away.
This is episode 15 of the Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast. My name is Larry Payton, and I have been diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress. I'd like to just take a moment to remind you to please leave your reviews and ratings of the podcast on your favorite podcasting service, be it Apple Music, Spotify, or whichever one you use. I would really appreciate you taking the moment to leave your thoughts on the podcast. Thank you. Yesterday was a bad day for me. A shitty day for me. It sucked. I was in a bad place yesterday. I woke up and I soon after learned that 3 members of the Ontario Provincial Police just south of Rockland were shot while attending a call of a gunshot that had gone off in the area. It appears that they were ambushed. One of the members, who was a sergeant and certainly not a young man, not a rookie, was killed in the incident. The 2 other members were sent to hospital, one of which has been released to my knowledge, and one still remains. I used to get very sad when I would hear things like this. I would get upset. It would hurt me, and it would make me depressed. After so many police officers being killed in the line of duty in the last few months, and just to let you know, in the last few months, there have been 10 police officers in this country who have been killed in the line of duty. 10 in a few months. So my sadness and depression yesterday did not hit. Instead, it evolved into anger. I was very agitated, very angry. It was not a good day for me. Now, as it happened, I had my session already booked, as I typically do on Thursday mornings with my psychologist. I step into the room we always go to have our discussions, our talks, our appointments, and she asked me how things are going. I said, everything's fine. And she immediately looked at me and said, no, it's not. What's happening? And the next hour was basically her listening to me being angry. Fucking fed up with whatever is going on in this country. I don't know what the hell has happened. I don't know where there has become such a willingness and a societal acceptance, at least for some people in our society, to think that it's okay to fucking kill people who are trying to help their community, their society, who are protectors. Yes, they are putting their lives on the line every day, but that's not what they fucking went to work for. They didn't go in and go, you know what? Yeah, I'm okay with not going home today. I'm totally fine with that. It's fine. No problem. These are different incidents in different provinces, in different cities across the country in the last few months. And so, yeah, I was angry. Yeah. I was angry. I did calm down quite a bit as a result of my session with my psychologist, and she is awesome. She is phenomenal. She has been a lifesaver to me. And I decided on the way home, because I was passing by, to stop into, sometimes say, my local watering hole. I know everyone there. They're great people at Off Track Brewing in Bedford. So I stopped in there. It was probably about, 20 after noon. I just knew I needed to chill out, space to myself, to relax. I did not care to be social. I did not care to have a conversation. I did not care to interact with people. And I knew that Off Track on a Thursday afternoon, just after lunch, would not be busy. It's not like I was going to a coffee shop where it would likely be busy. I felt that this was a place for me to be safe, that I could relax, that I could try to decompress and be better for when I went back home. I had one beer, and it took me a while to drink that beer. And I just sat there thinking. But before I had the beer, I decided to go live on Instagram and just express myself, express my thoughts of the day. I was very emotionally charged, at least inside. I don't know if it came across, but I just shared it in the raw, blunt, what I thought. And it got posted. And I'm okay with that. I don't make any apologies for me. I am who I am. That's it. I'm good with me. If you're not, I'm okay with that. I am not trying to be internet famous. I am not trying to make everyone happy. I am not trying to make everyone like me. I am who I am, and I am fine with that. So it got posted. And then I learned how many of you listeners have my six. It put a lump in my throat and a tear in my eye, because within minutes of that video going live and for the next few hours, I received several text messages, several direct messages, several phone calls. Yeah, I say I have your six, and I ask that you have mine. And yesterday, I really felt that love come through. I really felt it come back. I felt that my six was covered yesterday. And I was very appreciative for that. That helped put me into a better mindset. Was I great the rest of the day? No, I wasn't great. But I was not as agitated as I was at the time. And so I just want to say thank you to everyone who took a moment to reach out, who watched that, who were concerned. All of you who are listening, when I asked you to have my six, yeah, you had it. And that means a lot. It really does. And please know that I also have yours. Stick around after the break. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you have experience with post-traumatic stress and would like to join me for an episode, please reach out to me. You can contact me via direct message on Instagram, PTSD_podcast, or you can send me an email at Papa Tango Sierra Delta Podcast @gmail.com. Cheers.
This episode of the Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast is brought to you thanks to the support and financial sponsorship of Cracked Armor. Go to crackedarmor.com, read the story, buy the gear, wear it, to send a message to others who are struggling that they're not alone.
Also, check out Willow Tree Farm, care of Jason Subkowicz, another member who is struggling with PTSD and who frequently updates his Instagram to share his story. You can follow him at jason.subkowicz. That's Jason.Sierra Oscar Bravo Kilo Oscar Whiskey India Charlie Zulu.
We are back from the break. Thank you very much for sticking around and staying tuned in to the Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast. Today, I'd like to introduce retired RCMP member and current musician, Jonathan Williams. How's it going, Jonathan?
Yeah, good, Larry. How are you?
Good, man. Please introduce yourself. Tell us about you and about your journey.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. Yeah, and thank you so much for having me on the show. Each of us, I guess, we have a very unique and personal story, but it's funny. It all begins where we meet each other and understand what we're doing in Depot, but we all come from different backgrounds, and mine is definitely, it's always been in music. I've always been in BC, born in North Vancouver, and I grew up in a single family home with my mom. And just grew up with music always being played in the background. And of course, back in the because I was born in the early '70s, so back in the day it was awesome music.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah. Yep. Great music, brother. Great music.
Right? Yes. Yeah, the best of the best. So here I am growing up, being a youngin' and listening to the Doobie Brothers, the Eagles, Supertramp, and just such great music. And so I'm finding now that in my music and the playing stuff, that's definitely coming out. But yeah, I just kind of grew up with that. And I started playing the guitar around, well, I got my first guitar when I was 9. And it wasn't until really when I was 13 when I really connected with the guitar. Actually, it starts kind of when I was 12. There was a friend of mine in the neighborhood who played a guitar, electric guitar. It was blue, and it was fascinating. Just the fact that this thing can make rock and roll was such a mystery. And so I was in grade 8. I joined up to band class. It was one of the electives, and of course the music teacher at the time said, "Oh, I just want to introduce a new student here. This name's Jonathan Williams. Jonathan, what instrument would you like to play?" And I just looked at him with starry eyes and went, "The guitar." And he goes, "Tuba it is." So he gave me a tuba. I was so horrified because here I am, I'm 13 years old. I'm already insecure enough, and here I have to lug around the largest brass instrument. And I have these terrible memories of lumping this thing to my mom's car and stuffing it into the trunk, and it's too big that she can't close it. So I have to, with these bungee cords to keep this thing closed, and driving away from school, I felt like such a nerd, you know.
That is
So
horrible. That is horrible.
I
Yes,
know,
that is
but you know
horrible.
what?
Yes.
Yeah, but it had more of an impact than I realized because I loved, and I think it was at the time listening to Def Leppard and AC/DC and other stuff at the time. Here I was playing this tuba, and I would actually play the bass line to AC/DC on the tuba,
Oh,
just to
cool.
kind of train my ear, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
So here I am playing this thing, and for a year, I had to play this thing. Because there was no other tuba players, and this is the reason why I was cursed with it, is because the band teacher he took the school band on tours. So here I was playing the tuba as a sophomore, and then playing with the older kids and traveling around the Okanagan playing the tuba. I had no idea how to play this thing. I just had to play it by ear, and he just said, "Yeah, just play whatever you can." So,
Wow.
yeah, what a crazy experience. So a year goes by, I moved to Vancouver Island, and I'm now in grade 9. And the same thing happened where I am introduced to the band class there. And the teacher, she goes, "So, Jonathan, what would you like to play?" And I'm looking at her very suspiciously. And I just threw it out there again. "Yeah, well, I really want to play the guitar, the electric guitar." "Oh, well, we haven't had an electric guitar player. I can't see any problem with that." It was like, what?
Boom.
So, yep, boom, there it is. I go down to the local music store, get a red Strat-like guitar, and I had kind of really no idea how to play it, but now the passion is there. Now I have a reason to play, and they actually the whole band class learned a couple of songs so that I could showcase in it. And one of them was La Bamba. You remember when the movie came out?
Absolutely.
It was
Yeah.
Richie Valens.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I had to learn La Bamba, and I even learned the guitar solo part. And so here I am touring around, playing schools and the gymnasiums and rocking it out on the electric guitar, playing this solo in front of parents. And it was a new thing. So there was a lot of parents getting up and clapping and cheering. And I was like, wow. And I think that's when the rock star curse hit
Yep.
me. I was like, yeah, I'm sold. This is it. This is for me.
Yep. I can feel it, man. I can feel it.
So yeah, and it just went on from there. I just started listening to more and more music that was like heavily played with the guitar. So it was naturally more of the Eagles, more of the and then I started getting into heavier stuff, man. This is when I was a complete Iron Maiden fan, and so I just took it upon myself to learn all that stuff. And this is, of course, a lot of kids these days. Well, if you want to learn something, you can just look it up on YouTube or whatever. I'm like, no, none of that existed. Not even a smartphone. So whatever I had to learn, I had to learn by ear, just by playing from the tape or the record that we put on. And here I was, yeah, just training my ear more and more, playing these guitar chords and stuff and learning these solos all by ear. And flash forward maybe a few years later, I'm playing in bands, and I'm like 16 years old, and I joined another cover band that they were older than me, and they were playing in bars, and they had to sneak me in the back door to any shows that we were playing in the local pubs, and then sneak out again as soon as our show was over. And yeah, that was all I wanted to do. And coming home from school every day, it was guitar, it was music, practicing this and playing Guns N' Roses. And after I graduated from high school, I moved to Victoria. and just joined more bands. I became the lead guitar player for a couple of cover bands and playing shows. And then my guitars were stolen and I didn't know what to do with myself. So I became the lead singer of a cover band. And then finally I bought another guitar and it just grew from there. And yeah, one of the top cover bands that I played for, this was like 1995, 6, and all the way up to the early 2000s. I was lead vocals and guitar player for a cover band called Crush with a K. And we played all of the venues in Victoria. And we started opening up for bands like Kim Mitchell and Trooper and Dr. Hook and 5440
Wow.
and
Damn.
Colin James. Oh, yeah, it was awesome. So the dream was coming true. I was meeting Canadian legends and going backstage. So it just kept growing and growing and playing shows, getting better and performing in front of a few people up to hundreds of people. And so that was my life. It was just the trajectory that I was going on was that way, and it kept growing. So to continue from that is I used to do the acoustic songs in a cafe, and there was a blind date that a friend had set up, and I met my future wife at that time, and she always wanted to sing and be in a band too, and she had a good voice, but we just trained her up, and I realized, okay, well, wait a minute, you are far more prettier than I am, so perhaps we should make you lead vocals, and we did that, and we wrote some songs together, and we created a CD and it started getting a radio traction. And then we opened up for Edwin. And then we opened up for 5440 and then Colin James again and then Kim Mitchell again. And yeah, it was just amazing. And it was going places. One of the bands that we opened up for at the time was Spirit of the West.
Absolutely love them. Yeah.
They're amazing. So talented. I've seen them so many times playing Victoria. But the show that we shared the stage with them was back in 2002 on Vancouver Island. And we played a show with them. And then we just started speaking with Vince Dietrich. He's the drummer. And he wanted to work with us. So we actually went to his studio, his home studio. We put together a 3-song EP. He wrote and got a grant for us through Factor Music. And he was pitching it to Sony. And it was like, this is it. Like, we're going big time. Sony was listening and they were interested. And
Yeah, hell yeah.
it was like, this is it finally. And then everything dropped when my wife at the time said, yeah, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore.
Wow.
I was, what? We were right here on the cusp of success. My dream. This is all I ever wanted to be. No, I can't do it. I'm growing up. I want to do something else. So it took me a while to really consider that. And we had been married at the time, right? So I'm like, oh, it's not like I want to leave you for music. I got to do the right and mature thing. All right. Well,
Yeah.
it's this. I'll hang up the guitars and we'll have a family, and that's what it was. I kept playing a few places here and there, but it just fizzled out. And of course, now it's time to put food on the table and pay for a place if we're going to have a family. And so I did what everyone would do and became a police officer.
There you go.
Right? Oh my goodness, yeah, because I had not done anything to prepare myself for that switch. So I wasn't putting any effort into further education and getting a degree or a diploma in anything. It was just music. This is all I was going to do. So when I was faced with what are you going to do now, I didn't know. It was difficult. So I'd done some secretarial jobs. It was actually before it was all construction, and I did everything: framing, roofing, concrete, and all that kind of stuff. And then I started doing secretarial work, and it was really weird. But one of the jobs I did was I worked at the Sandwich Police Department as a clerk. I learned how to type and do all that stuff. And it was really, my first introduction to police work. It was cool to be able to transcribe reports and help officers with their files. But I remember being asked by one of the members, hey, man, you do a pretty good job of these reports. Do you ever think about being a police officer? I said, absolutely not. Never. No, I saw some of the photos that you sent to me of a fatality, and I said, I would never want to look at that. No, thanks.
Yeah.
And years later, here I am filling out an application for the RCMP.
Yeah. Funny how it works, eh?
I know. Yeah. But I think the reason why is I needed something fulfilling to fill that void that music had always had on me. So it had to be something incredible, had to be something meaningful, had to be something exciting, right? So I think that's why police work appealed to me.
Makes perfect sense.
And thankfully, I was somewhat of a decent guy and had a decent history, no criminal record and all that kind of stuff, right? So I qualified and moved, and had this massive transformation. It's incredible.
So then you joined the RCMP. And what year did you go to Depot?
Then I joined the RCMP. Yeah, it was 2008. And I had my firstborn son. He was 16 weeks old when I got the green light to fly out to Regina.
That's tough. That's
It
tough.
was. It was incredibly tough. But we all knew that this type of sacrifice in my absence would mean a better future for us. It was heartbreaking, but to come back and to be transformed from a cadet to a constable was such an honorable thing, such a massive achievement in my life. I'll never, I still love it when I think back to that because you realize the impact that you can make is more so than in a lot of things. And to be given that responsibility is actually quite intimidating when I first realized it. Oh my goodness.
So when did you graduate Depot? And then tell us about your first posting.
So in September of 2008, came out March 2009, first posted to Burnaby, BC. And I was trying so hard to get back to Victoria because that's where home was for so many years. But Burnaby was the closest I could make it. So we just moved to Burnaby and started with getting my feet completely wet, like just right into it. A lot of members troop mates that I had were going off to, the smaller posts. And I had no idea what I was up for because I hadn't really spoken to many officers before going in. I did speak with a few, but when I was transferred to Burnaby, it's like I got to experience so much in an expressed amount of time, like just everything was going on. So all of the units were there. IHIT was there, PDS, every unit that was available was there. To see that and to be able to experience all of that was incredible. And it's really cool because then you get to see, wow, where do I want to go in my career? What interests me? And that's why the Lower Mainland is so great because the options seem almost limitless
Right. Yeah.
with where you want to go. Yeah, so I loved it. I loved my trainer. I was graced and blessed with an amazing trainer who actually just was maybe almost a year into his own career. So
That sounds
one
about
of the
right.
things he
Yeah.
said, I know, right? And that's quite typical, but
Yep.
it's not the right way. But no, him and I were very humble with each other. And he said, yeah, well, it's the blind leading the blind. So let's just do this together. So I was there for, could potentially spend your entire career. And that, especially the Lower Mainland, it's hard. And I learned this later. It's hard to actually leave it because the demand and the need is so incredibly high that a lot of members can't transfer out. But I did because my mother was diagnosed with lymphoma and she had less than a year to live. Like just bam, there it was. I couldn't believe it. And so I was expecting for her to go into palliative care and respiratory care. And I thought, wow, man. So I put in for a compassionate transfer, was told I probably wouldn't get it, but got it in like just a matter of weeks.
Oh, wow. That's great.
And was transferred to Powell River. Now, my mom, she's only 20 years older than I am. I watched her transform from being sick and sick and sick and getting sicker to by the time when I got my transfer and the move all said and done and moved to, and this is in Powell River on the coast here in BC, when I finally arrived there and going for the few months that it took to get everything ready, she was going downhill. And when I moved there and got everything unpacked, she came to me and said, son, I'm healed. I went, what?
What? Wow.
I couldn't believe it. Yeah, she said, yeah. I said, no, Mom, I hate to say this, but like the doctor said that you're not going to make it. That's why I'm here. She goes, no, I have been praying and praying and praying. And she even forego the bone marrow transplant. That's one of the radical procedures now that they try to stop it, right? So
Right.
she said, no. I went to the doctors and they said that you are in
remission.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. And even the doctors, they couldn't believe it. And this was 2011, 2012.
Wow. And here we are.
I couldn't.
12, 13
right.
years
And she
later.
is
Wow.
still alive, and she's still in remission, and has not had any other cancer come forward.
That's amazing.
I know. It was a total miracle. And she said that, it was just her community, her prayers. She's such a strong in her faith. So that was amazing testimony to me for her and her walk with God too, right? So that was hugely impactful. So here I was in Powell River, and rather than mourning the loss of my mother, I was celebrating her rebirth pretty much, right? So
Yeah. It's
it was
amazing.
incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So you go to Powell River, you're with your wife, you have your son. Is your second child born at that point?
Yeah, she was born when we were still in Burnaby. We have got a son and a daughter, the $1 million family thing. And here we are living in a small community and having family around. It was awesome. It was just incredible. And it was one of the best detachments that I worked at because everyone was chill. Everyone worked together fine, great attitudes, great work ethic. It was fantastic. One of the best experiences I had, especially coming out of the Lower Mainland, because I did actually have to deal with some pretty intense harassment issues from a corporal of mine. It was awful. I was losing sleep all over it. And and so that was probably the start of when things were changing for me to wear that burden and to keep going. And as we know, it's a race. Most of us don't stop. It's kind of like you got to keep going. You can't really slow down. I can't find a therapist or a counselor. I just don't even have time to sleep. And so, but getting to Powell River was different for me. It was great. Everyone was supportive and looking out for each other. So I was there for 3 years.
That burden, I think, is important because I feel that a lot of times people consistently think that it's an external causation that leads to post-traumatic stress. And that's not always the case. I mean, there certainly can be some external factors, but the devastating thing is how much internally, and what I mean by internally, I mean within the organization, that creates the breeding ground for it, in the sense that, you expect, and it sucks, but you expect people are probably everywhere not going to love you because you're a police officer. However, I mean, at least for me, like, I believe everyone that I work with would be great. We would all have each other's backs. And I mean, based on what you just said, that's not necessarily the case.
It's such a disappointment. And I think the best way I've actually described it to a few is becoming a police officer. I use the analogy of the Matrix when Neo had to make the decision between taking the blue pill or the red pill. And when you take the red pill, you actually can never unsee what life we see anymore. Like, you see everything, all of the lurking shadows and the evil in the world, and how people are two-faced and they change, and like, you're hated. And so I felt when I saw the Matrix, I was like, oh my goodness, I know what that's like. so when people say, when they say, what's it like being a police officer? Well, just, have you seen the movie Matrix? Yeah, it's like taking the red pill. So
I concur, man. How many times have I looked at people and said, I really wish I took the blue pill? Right? Look,
yeah,
damn.
Right. Ignorance is bliss. And that's how we see society too, right? Like, in the things that we see, it's hard not to be frustrated. So you're right about when it's internal, it's so much more negatively impactful to our sanity, because we can't trust the outside world anymore. We can't, because we've seen how it changes and how people are two-faced and how the media is after us to catch us in the wrong all the time.
Correct. Yep.
And so we have to rely just on family and just on our friends who are also members. Very few non-members was I friends with, only because you're different. I don't know if you feel it too, but there's a rift between myself and non-member friends. They can't fathom. It's like, dude, I can't even imagine me dealing with that. Yeah, I know. It's too bad.
Yep. Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, when you get that treatment or the harassment or the insults or anything from, it's that much more impactful to you, because you depend your life on these people to have your back, because you don't live, the world has changed. And so when someone betrays you within that inner circle, oh my goodness, it's like the damage it does to that trust. It's that much more. So yeah, that's how I've discovered it to be.
It's painful. It is. When you feel like you can't, and I mean, how many times do I say this on the show? It's about having your six and also people having mine. And that's the reality of it, is that when you feel that's lost, that's just such a kick to the guts. I mean, it takes your breath away. It makes your heart drop. At least that's what I feel. It's just, how is it you don't? I'm not really sure. Yeah. So what we're going to do, Jonathan, we're going to take a quick break. And once we come back, we are going to talk about what happened after your 3 years in Powell River. Take a quick break.
This episode of the Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast is brought to you thanks to the support and financial sponsorship of Cracked Armor. Go to crackedarmor.com, read the story, buy the gear, wear it, to send a message to others who are struggling that they're not alone.
Also, check out Willow Tree Farm, care of Jason Subkowicz, another member who is struggling with PTSD and who frequently updates his Instagram to share his story. You can follow him at jason.subkowicz. That's jason.Sierra Oscar Bravo Kilo Oscar Whiskey India Charlie Zulu.
And we are back from the break. Thank you for sticking around for the second half of the Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast with Jonathan Williams, musician. And I said you were a retired RCMP officer. Jonathan, are you retired yet?
It's in the process, yeah. So I've made the decision to retire, so.
Okay,
yeah.
So we're close enough.
Yeah.
We ended off the break talking a little bit about the inside issues. As Jason Sobkowicz had mentioned on a previous episode, just some police culture issues. You mentioned harassment and how that impacted you and really started the spiral. You went to Powell River. You were there for 3 years. It sounds like an amazing post.
Yeah.
Why did you leave? What happened?
Because we were a newer family, quite young. When we got to Powell River, we really put a lot of investment financially into the home that we had. It was an older home, so we just kind of didn't really pay attention to our finances. So we did so much to the house. It was great. And then we just kind of realized, oh my goodness, we're in a difficult financial spot. What do we do? And so there was the idea to take an LDP or an isolated post, but I put my name into a few places and kind of blindly. So I put my name in for a northern post, Alexis Creek, which is just an hour's drive west from Williams Lake area in BC. Lo and behold, I got it pretty quick, and we were excited because it's a new adventure. We'd moved a few times already, not just within detachments, but we had moved in a few places, and we were enjoying this kind of like a new beginning. So yeah, so that was the excitement of it, but I had no idea what we're getting into. You get your few days to travel and view the home and stuff, and this was going to be forced housing. But we were so, I don't know, naive, I would say, that we said, no, not going to even take it. We're just going to go. And so, yeah,
Wow.
moving truck came, loaded our stuff, and we drove out just ahead of our moving truck and met everyone and moved into the home, and culture shock, man. It was,
I would say so. Yeah.
yep. So, because we moved from a close-knit community, family, friends, everything, into a place where there was a lot of hate towards police, and the only ones that we could trust were the close-knit members. It was like maybe 12 members. And so if you're not working, you're on call. The people that we were working with initially were amazing, and they all understood that because we're alone in this community, and yeah, it wasn't considered an isolated post, but all we had there in Alexis Creek was a general store, a medical where a registered nurse is working there as your practitioner, and a school, and a mechanic, and that's it. We fit in and started working with the crew that was there. We really got close, and it felt great. But that was just for a year because I think it still is a 2-year post. Those members transferred. And I remember mourning kind of that feeling because then I was really scared. I couldn't move because I still had at least another year to go. And so in came another crew, and I had no reservations for treating the next crew with complete kindness and compassion and to adopt them as my new family. But oh my goodness. Yeah, I won't say names, but we were led by terrible management. And again, this is when the harassment and the issues that came, not only professionally, but personally too, that came about. And this was after I succeeded in getting a 1-year extension. So now here we are for 3 years. Not only did the stress come immensely at that time, but it was also from the work. Like every time I got in the truck and to leave, I was always accused of being racist and always accused of being a government pawn, or my intentions were always crooked. And it's like, oh no, like, and you could never prove yourself. You always had to battle this, maybe a few people in the communities, because we're looking after Alexis Creek is nestled in the middle of 4 First Nations reserves.
Okay.
And so we had to look after that whole community. And just the Alexis Creek itself was more or less like a farmer's village, right? So
Okay.
there's a lot of cattle raising and stuff. So it was wild. A lot of people call it the Wild West, and it absolutely was. So that was really hard. So there was one thing after another, where my trust was destroyed in outside with the work, but within, and it was incredible. It was the worst. I know it's in comparison to a lot of other members. I'm sure it probably wasn't, and there's things, but it was me. It's just who I am as a person, and my limits as a member too. So yeah, one thing after another. So it was hard. And after that 3 years, here I am. I'm like, every morning I wake up and I'm like, okay, one more day. I just couldn't, there's so much going on internally, personally. I've given so much. And this is the other thing too, that I think you can agree on too, Larry, is that what hurts the most is knowing that you've given everything of yourself. You've sacrificed your life. You've risked your life. You've sacrificed your sleep. You're accountable to society more than anyone else, right? And the moment you do wrong, you're going to be flogged by it. And you give and give and give. And then when something else happens that wants to take more of you, that's where it's exhausting. You hit this wall. And that's where I was. I gave everything to do my job the best that I could to the community and to my partners. And then here I am, I'm stuck. And I kind of had a breakdown right there. And being a man of faith, I started praying right there. So just to kind of jump forward to where we're at, I managed to leave Alexis Creek. I was transferred to Armstrong Detachment here in the Okanagan area. It was paradise because leaving I love the few people that I gotten to know there, but it was a hard many years. But we got here and it was like, oh, okay, back in society, back into a community where I can feel safe with the kids going to school, not being targeted. And yeah, but I was only here. I was still unpacking my boxes. One of the first things I did was set the TV up on the wall and plug it in and get the cable working. Hey, look, the cable's working. Now let's turn on the news. And as I'm unpacking the boxes, they're still piled up. Here I am watching BC's worst forest fire season of all time, and they're showing all of the places where the fires had hit. And this has all happened in the week that I had transferred and started unpacking.
Wow.
And then they mentioned that west of Williams Lake is on fire, and I went, no, I have to go back.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
so I phoned the detachment and I said, I know I'm here and I'm on vacation. I'm using my time, but do you guys need help? Absolutely, Jonathan. Yep, get on back here. So I had to rent a car and drive through walls of fire through 100-mile house, barely even making it there myself. I was there for 10 days. They had additional members to fight the fire living in the empty house that I vacated. And I stayed with my corporal at the time. And it was nothing but a full 10 days of evacuating people out of their homes and seeing this looming darkness and fire engulfing everything that I've called home for the last 3 years. So that in itself was traumatic, just to see everything burn up. Yeah, all the stories that we went to. I did it, and finally they set me free. They brought someone else in. I was one of the very few remaining members there, so I was kind of expected to guide the extra members that showed up to assist them in kind of where we need to go and how to get to these communities. Some of them didn't even have electricity. They were running off of generators. And so they were totally off the grid. So we had to go there and get them out. So yeah, so then finally I made it back home after 10 days. I was exhausted, but then I had to plug in and be my best at this new detachment. And I was, after all of that, then slowly the files started happening and the destruction of my marriage happened within months after moving here. And so I just never got a break from trauma, from extreme changes. So then the marriage dissolved, and then I had to. I tried for a couple of years to forgive and move on, and no, it didn't work because 2 years later, bang, it all kind of got destroyed again, and so that's when it was the hardest because my only because I couldn't trust because of the trauma and the bitterness, the betrayal that I had from the inner circle of the members that I was working with. Now it happened to the nucleus of my inner circle. And when that happened, Larry, I was done. I was done. I hated everything. I hated life. I hated people. I hated the work. I lasted for maybe a couple of years in the detachment. And then finally, I remember receiving a file, and I was standing there, and it started turning into something more like a financial issue where this street person was found with, like, I don't know, 25 different copies of people's identities. So naturally they had stolen a bunch of identity from mail and stuff. So they were using them. When I realized that, like, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I just looked at my corporal and I said, I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore. And him and I both like kind of went, what do you mean? I said, I don't know. And I started crying, and I just, because my identity, right down to the core, was gone. Everything I trusted was gone. The only thing that I was now was a husband, and that was gone. And so to be expected to show up at work and fix other people's problems, I was like, go fuck yourselves. I was done. I hated everyone. And I fell into one of the hardest depressions actually the only hardest depression where Larry, actually, this is the best way to explain it. You know, when you go to these files where it's suicide and you got to clean up the mess there and you deliver the news to the family that's usually right there. And I leave the scene thinking, fuck, what possessed this person to think that this is the only way out of the situation? Like, hey, you got to be messed up, man. Like, really? But when I hit that rock bottom, I said to myself, I went, oh, this is where they were. This is where they were. Because everything that they believed in was gone. There was no hope, no joy, no purpose. It was gone. And that's when it was like, wow, oh my goodness, I'm right here. And Larry, if I was not strong in my faith, I know I would have done something, because at that time, that was the only way. I wanted the pain to stop. And actually, there was no purpose for me anymore. I was replaced. My ex-wife married again, and I felt I was not even a dad anymore. And so my personal situation was devastating to me, so much so that I was done. I had lost everything physically, I lost everything mentally, and I lost every aspect of that. So I was done, Larry. I was done.
Well, understandable. Yeah. I mean, I think you worded that so well, Jonathan. Just the understanding at that point, because yeah, we're all guilty of it, going to
Yeah.
those horrible suicide calls. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I think one of our coping mechanisms is always trying to differentiate what goes on with other people from us. So I know it's easy when you go to calls and go, well, yeah, but that person's older. Well, that person was, an alcoholic or a drug user or whatever.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
it's when all of a sudden that there becomes a real difficulty to differentiate.
Mhm.
And that's when reality strikes. That's
Yeah.
when you go, yeah, these people are actually all like me. And I had no idea I could reach this level. It's scary. It's horrible.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, what a learning experience. And that's how I can see it now. It's the end of the road for that chapter of my life. When we have changes in our lives, something changes, something ends, or maybe you finish something and you move on. But when everything came to a dead end, I didn't know which way to go. And that's why I 100% was at the end. So I spent days and days just in my bed and crying and looking out the window and just questioning even my faith now, because I see, and I had seen my position as a police officer as, biblically, it's kind of like it's explaining as, we're the shepherd, we're the ones that go after the lost sheep, right? Everyone else is doing well, but there's that one that just doesn't care about life and takes off and does bad things. And our job is actually to go get them, to leave the sheep behind and go get that lost sheep.
Right.
And I believe that so wholeheartedly. And so now when I started thinking, I went after so many lost sheep, and this is what I get for it. This is my reward.
Yep. That resonates the hell out of me, buddy. Like that, you
Yeah.
just hit home with me.
Yeah.
Yep.
I didn't know what to do. Like, what's the purpose now? I could care less. I had no more feelings left. And that's why that low is so risky. It's so dangerous, because no one, even therapists, counselors, I thought they were a joke, because they would say, well, things will move on. Are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have any idea what life is about. People come into your office all the time and you encourage them to get through and maybe talk through their situations. I've been to my own situations, and I've been to like thousands of other people's, and life is shit. And that's all I can say is like, yeah, great. I'm glad that you can help others, but I know the truth.
Yep.
I know the truth. And
Yep.
it was such a lonely feeling.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know what to do. I just remember spending days thinking over and over and wondering what it was, and being lost. And if I was even questioning my faith, if this is what the reward is for being a good person and sacrificing my entire life for, then no, I'm done. There was a therapist that helped me with kind of shifting my view. And she said, well, before you became a police officer, what did you do for fun? Like, what brought you joy? And I went, I chuckled and I went, well, my pursuit before this was to become a rock star. And so
Yeah.
I laughed for the first time, and she goes, well, do you still have your instruments? Yeah, I do. I think they're somewhere in storage. Well, you get them out and just start playing. I guess so. It felt like it was so dumb, because at the time, nothing could change my viewpoint of life. But I thought, well, what the hell? I do remember enjoying playing guitar. So I got them out and I started playing. And instantly, there was that little spark of innocence where I had left off before getting married, and before any of that. I just went right back to where the innocence that I felt in my childhood was there. I chuckle too, because that's the typical saying of like, no, you got to reach your inner child.
I don't know. I mean,
So
yeah,
in some ways that happened.
we tend to write that stuff off, but there's something to be said about it, Jonathan. Like, I mean, there is something there, because let's be honest. I mean, it was pre-trauma, and life was actually good then. You were happy then, and that's what I find I hang on to is, when did I stop being happy? When did I stop being excited and trying to figure out what it is that brings those things back? So no, man, it said a lot, because it actually means something.
That was the additional piece that I needed. I knew that my faith was being tested, and I knew that I didn't have the answer, but I was just waiting to see what would happen. And then that happened too. So I felt that innocence again. And that was so gone and so lost for so many years, especially after for what we do. So I started playing again. And it wasn't for anyone. It was just to bring joy and a smile to my life. And that's all that mattered because it wasn't for anyone else. It wasn't because I was needed to for anyone else, for work, nothing. It was just for me. And I was like, oh, this is cool. This is really cool. Because not only did it trigger that old spark that had been put out and start that kindling the fire of joy and innocence, but it also was the best way that I could express myself. I couldn't find any words to say to anyone. But when I'm playing music, we all know that how impactful that is, how music just kind of lets us feel vulnerability and lets us feel the emotions that we have without having to kind of filter it through our vocabulary. It just came out. So, oh my, I started playing more and more. And then I was writing rock guitar solos and writing music. And I thought, you know what, maybe I'll go to the recording studio. This is something I used to do too, right? So I booked a session, went to a local recording studio and recorded a couple songs. And then I was excited and then I put it out. One of the songs that I wrote was called Aaliyah. And I wrote that because Aaliyah was kind of like in biblical terms, it means the rising of a people from a devastating past and moving and rising up to it. So that kind of was the one word that I could use to encapsulate the full meaning that I had behind the song. And it started getting airplay. Down in the US, there's a Guitar One. It was a radio station that had their radio play of all of my guitar heroes. And they picked it up and they started playing it. And I couldn't believe it when I was looking at the list of songs that were being played or just recently played. There was all of my heroes. It was like Joe Satriani and Steve Vai and then Eric Johnson and then Jonathan Williams. I was like, what?
Damn.
So
Damn.
that
Yeah.
spark of music just started hitting. So I kept writing more and more. And then my first song that I wrote to express what I went through personally is called One of Those Days. And this is the first song that I ever recorded with my singing and guitar playing. I put so much love and passion into this project that it was such a good way of expressing myself, but also the message that was there connected with so many others. And so again, this message and this experience that I was putting into the song, everyone that I would share it with kept sharing it, and then they would share more, and it just started getting out there. And people were sending me messages back and saying, Jonathan, this song is like you crawled right inside my brain and wrote a song with all of my feelings. And I even got a call from someone down in the States saying, dude, I'm going to be honest with you. I was on the verge of, ending things. And I listened to your song and I couldn't help myself but feel drawn to that. And so you've given me hope. So I was like, whoa, oh my goodness. I was just doing this for my own benefit, but wow. So when I started seeing others relating and finding hope through it, I thought, okay, well, this is probably what's next for me. And so I kept doing that. So I recorded some more songs. And man, Larry, it's amazing when you're on the right streak, faithfully, impossible things start happening for you. And it's incredible. And here I am, Larry. I'm what a lot of people consider as a singer-songwriter. And a lot of people have no idea of the most recent past that I went through. Right. So it's
Absolutely.
incredible.
Absolutely. And I don't know. I try to be much more of an optimist than a pessimist, and I try to really find that silver lining and accept that, this path, for some reason, as much as it was very, very troublesome and difficult, I was supposed to take it. And, Jonathan, I mean, the fact that your music is really hitting home with so many people, inclusive of today, I watched the music video for it, which was amazing. Very, very well done. The song certainly resonates. I mean, it is truly about desperation and just getting through.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry to say this because it sounds really shitty, but I mean, there seems to have been a reason that you had to endure what you had to endure, because now you're helping so many others.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And it's amazing that devastating things that happen to us, the suffering, it really radically changes us. And we won't know it until much, much, much later, that there's, and most likely is, a reason why that happened to you. And the benefit that you have to others comes through that. And so that's kind of the message I'm sharing now. Is like, when they ask, how did you make it through, dude? Like, you were totally at your end. Yeah, I was. But that purpose that we feel of having, or that need to feel purposeful, of the need to, like, why am I even doing this? Because Lord knows we're the worst when it comes to that. Okay, you're doing that, but why? What's the purpose? There's got to be a reason why you do it. It's just, and it has to be meaningful. And that's it. That's what I'm doing. So when I know that people are listening, and when I know I get the feedback that is helping them, it's like, okay, there's more joy almost in pulling things toward me to comfort me. There's more joy in the releasing of my experience and the testimony and seeing people gain from it. It's weird. I still haven't really figured out how that works or how to explain it, but there's a bigger path that I'm on, Larry, and it's almost like you can't get here without going through that valley of horrific suffering. And it's weird.
There's
really
no free pass. There's just no free pass, and that's the reality of it. I've said a number of times before, I talk more openly and more comfortably with people who are, fucked up like I am. And that's just because there's a genuity there that unfortunately you have to walk that path to be able to actually speak of it and sing about it and write about it down the road.
Absolutely.
And there is no free pass. You got to earn. I say a lot of times you've got to earn those scars.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Larry, it's so easy because I know I was caught up in it, because you can think of all of the things that were wrongfully done to you, and you can stay bitter about it for years. I still am. I just have to give thought to a couple of things, and it's like, yeah, I did not deserve that. I gave so much of myself to do everything for the greater good. And one of the things too is I did a 5-week program for PTSD and depression and anxiety. And thankfully, it was quite local, so I didn't have to leave home where my kids are for that long. But one of the things I realized too is that when I was there, at first I got worse because I thought to myself, damn it, on top of everything I had to go through, now I'm mentally ill.
Yeah.
Here's the cherry on top of the whole picture of all the suffering. I am now mentally ill. I have an issue and I have triggers, and but that made me bitter too. I was like,
absolutely.
Why? When will this suffering and the unfair treatment end? But even that I had to experience, because I won't be, and I won't have the credit, or people won't believe me if I haven't experienced the same walk that they did. And you have so much more clout when you experience the same suffering as the people that are walking that same path. Even before any of this happened, this is another reason why my inner circle was so small, the social circle, is because the respect that we give is so hard earned. And so when people are ignorant to certain things, it's like, no, I can't even talk to you. I can't even speak small talk. If someone comes up to you and goes, yeah, so the weather's getting pretty cold, eh? I'm like, I just want to walk away because I have no time for small talk. My life has all been about hard stuff, real stuff, truth, awful truth. And so I don't have time for fluff. So when we experience that, we have the ability to talk about hard stuff. And in some ways, it's a blessing almost, because you experience that. There's a level of respect that you become aware of yourself. And that's the thing too. It took me a while to kind of reflect on myself and went, wow, I'm not bitter as I used to be. I actually wow, there's honor in this, actually. There's honor in surviving some of the most difficult things that very few people experience, to survive it and to talk about it and to become vulnerable. And Larry, this is why I was so excited when you reached out. And to me, I thought this is amazing, because we get to share our journeys. And a lot of people don't want to, because it's either too hurtful or it triggers. And I totally respect that, because I was there too. I couldn't listen to a lot of things because it would just remind me of my own suffering. But when you get through it, man, I don't know, there's something more about that truth, about walking and breathing and living a life that is so raw. There's so much honor in that.
There's something that you said earlier in terms of the blue pill to the red pill. And this is what takes you all around to the shit that you see and you deal with after taking that red pill. It changes you. It's horrible. There's no sugarcoating it. It's horrible. But I do love that you come full circle and say there is honor in that. There is the fact that you've survived that. There is now a group of people that have also taken that pill, that have also walked that path, and there will be others coming behind you. And that just creates a completely different dichotomy of the sense of community, because, what happened was, and I truly believe that we were a part of a community, and there was a period that was gone. We lost it. And your music, the podcasts, peer support groups, ranches. This is where we're finding that sense of community again, where we felt no trust for a long time. And now we're finding it because we've all earned those scars. Absolutely, Jonathan, you're hitting the nail on the head. Jonathan, before we end off, and I'm looking forward to, we're going to end the show today with your authorization to play an excerpt from One of Those Days, which I think is an amazing song.
Oh, thank you.
Is there anything else that you want to add, that you want to share, that you want to tell people? This is your time. This is your story. Say what you need to say.
It's a walk that will transform you into, believe it or not, it's going to transform you to the best you. When you really reconnect with yourself, you will feel more genuine the feelings that we used to feel. Like when I love, it's a deeper version of it. I didn't think I would ever again because of the hurt and the suffering, but you will make it through. And there's so much honor that you experience when you make it to the other side. And you have to give up what other people think. And our job is for so much to satisfy the community and to satisfy our supervisors and stuff. And the sad fact is that they'll never be satisfied. Your work is never done. You can't go to your job and think, okay, today's going to be an easy day, because some other shitstorm is going to fall on you, and it's never ending. So to know that you are the only one that can give you the compassion and understanding and trust, and look within. Yeah, stop looking outwards for acceptance, for value. You'll never find it. It's inside yourself.
There's not a thing I could say more to clue that up. That was perfect. People need to look within. We're all here. We all have each other. The people that you know, you trust. If you're listening to this, it's likely because you trust me. Know that I trust you, and know that there are literally thousands of others who are listening to this and also trust you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time today, Jonathan. It was fantastic speaking with you. I really appreciate that. I appreciate your transparency. People can find Jonathan Williams' music on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Just search it. You will find it. He's on Instagram, Facebook. I look forward to our paths crossing someday, my friend.
Likewise, Larry. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for tuning in to the Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast. My name is Larry Payton. I have your 6. Please also have mine.